Welcome to this very special edition of Your Voice America. I have been working with a company called Nestpoint Associates. They are a very dynamic consulting firm. They work in global public affairs and they are government advocacy experts. Alex Olson is the Deputy Director of Government Affairs, and Michael Murphy, goes by Murph, is the Senior Advisor to Africa. Alex, tell us a little bit about Nestpoint. What is your mission? What is your company about?
Of course. And Bill, thank you so much for having us today. So this has been a long time coming. Nestpoint has been the cultivation of relationships through decades of experience between all of our partners, including our managing director. Our start began in Southern California. My mentor and our managing director, John Thomas, he'd been working in SoCal Republican politics for decades, and I worked under him as his right hand at Thomas Partners. And we had built great relationships across the country, from U.S. Senate down to state legislatures. And one of his good friends from back in the day, I believe they'd met on a ballot initiative in the early 2000s, Henry Huang, our other managing director, had just got back from overseas. And the two of them had decided they wanted to launch a private equity firm, something new, something fresh, mostly in the energy and tech space. When the two of them had came together and were trying to conceptualize what Nestpoint would be, we realized that a lot of our potential investees and clients that we would be working with were dealing with regulatory concerns because a lot of these were overseas companies. And so we had kind of had to make a decision there. We had one or two options. One, John and I had cultivated relationships across government, all along K Street, that we could have brought in to handle these problems via a third party. But then we thought to ourselves, we've built great relationships across the United States. Why don't we just do it ourselves? And
Right.
so that was the first concept of Nestpoint, was let's help our clients that we are investing in succeed in the regulatory realm. And it grew from there. It grew to companies, Fortune 500s, foreign governments, and all the such coming to us to handle these delicate issues. And we built, let me tell you, Bill, we built a hell of a team. Stuart Jolly, Trump's national field director in 2016, Tim Phillips, who was the founding president of Americans for Prosperity, so on and so forth. We cultivated this great team of operatives to really handle these problems in a quick and efficient manner. And we've grown, hence our founding, and we're very excited to be here and be doing what we're doing.
That's fantastic. Well, Murph, you are the expert on Africa. I tell you what, I was reading your resume, and there were so many titles and honors there, I kind of lost track. You're a former military guy. You are a real estate developer, and now you're working with Nestpoint, developing their Africa business. Tell us a little about yourself and about that.
Yeah, it's thanks, Bill, for having me. Ultimately, I have over 20 years of experience on the ground in Africa and the Middle East. And as you said, I was a real estate developer. I started building a hotel in Liberia with Robert Johnson, the founder of Black Entertainment Television, and we built the first new construction in 22 years in a post-conflict Liberia. And I tell people, you either love Africa or hate it. And I stepped on the foot on the continent, and I never turned back. I loved it. I love the potential of it, the excitement of it, the ability to get things done. And from there, I built a career all across the continent, ultimately stretching into the Middle East as well. But from my perspective, Nestpoint is such a great landing place for me and my point of my career, because their focus on investment with government affairs really
Right.
matches up with the Trump administration. And this new
Yes.
trade, not aid philosophy is really virgin territory in Africa. So it's a great place for an investment firm to be able to make investments, but also a government affairs firm to help hold hands for both sides.
Yeah, one of the things I've been noticing about the Trump doctrine is it really is a peace through prosperity. doctrine that instead of giving handouts to these nations, and they have the ongoing wars and the conflicts, showing them how to become prosperous, working with the United States, because if they're prosperous, they're not going to want to have wars with each other and wars with us. They're going to want to maintain that relationship. And so the whole idea of going to more of a commercial relationship and business relationship as opposed to just providing aid, I think is a great idea. Alex, tell us a little bit about why your company became focused in Africa, because I know the Trump administration has dramatically been changing their diplomatic outlook there.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think it was one of necessity. Lobbyists like us get a bad rep. Folks think that our primary concern is profit. But that is totally untrue. I think how we at least see ourselves at Nestpoint, and I can't speak for the rest of K Street, is we see ourselves as private sector diplomats, folks who can wheel and deal on behalf of the Trump administration from a private sector lens, to be able to be there in the thick of it, work with businesses, and really escape the bureaucracy that goes on within things like the State Department and DFC. And so we looked at Africa when Murph and the rest of the gang and us sat down and said, what should be our focus here? And we looked at the continent, and we looked at particularly China's encroachment on the continent and how that impacted us from a national security standpoint. We said, we have to do something here. We have to get involved. We have to raise the alarm bells, and we have to really help gear the continent back to the United States. I mean, China and Africa this last year, or I believe it was 2023, had a $240 billion trade surplus, versus to the United States, it was only $47 billion. There's a mass discrepancy there. Not only that, you have China and their Belt and Road Initiative building infrastructure across Africa, allowing them to control the flow of rare earth minerals, key strategic ports, and the such. And that should be a concern to Americans. And so that is kind of what formulated why we thought Africa deserved attention, because I think it's for most folks in diplomacy and most folks in our side of the business, it really is the lost continent. Most folks, they don't even know where Angola is on a map. So for us to bring the expertise, to bring people like Ambassador Murphy, and to be able to really detail our Africa plan and be able to have the foot in the door with the administration to bring that plan to their doorstep and say, hey, this is not only good for them, who are our clients and we represent, but this is good for America and our national security concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And Africa is so rich in natural resources, aren't they? I mean, you have rare earth minerals, you have, gold, you have all these different things there. And these are all important to us, to our technology industry. Rare earth minerals, absolutely essential. And we don't want to become dependent upon China anymore. Murph, what do you think about that? What is our approach towards working with Africa to cultivate those relationships in the minerals area?
Well, I look at it from, again, the same way as the president. President's a developer. I look at it as a developer as well. This is a giant real estate development opportunity. And
Right.
and it's 54 different countries, but ultimately every country has very strong resource wealth. And because of the Chinese, well, first because of the European colonial feelings on the continent, there is a deficit there with Europe, which was filled by China. And China ultimately has a debt mercantile model, which has really taken advantage of them for 40 years. What I've always said to American investors is Africa is probably the only place on earth where they absolutely want Americans to come and invest. And we have been focused everywhere else in the world, but it is a marketplace that really wants us there. Now, are there challenges? Of course, there's challenges. But now with the new administration and the critical minerals piece, we're starting to see that those challenges are manageable. And that management of those challenges allow for a capitalist-centric, America first, and an American partnership with an African country become a model where both sides win. As you said before, it will reduce conflict, because when people are making money and sending their kids to school and are fed, they don't have time to fight. They're too busy working and too busy making money. And I think that's where we're headed. But ultimately, our strategic competitor, which is China, has been there for 40 years and ultimately has filled the gap with free, quote unquote, free things. And those free things actually have come with a tremendous amount of debt
Right.
costs to those people. And so we present an equity alternative, and I mean equity in the capitalist sense. We provide an equity alternative, which means both sides are going to win. And in the end, the other thing people don't realize about Africa is it's got, as a continent, it has one of the largest middle classes in the world. And that
Right.
middle class is completely underserved. They have no ability to go shopping. They shop in Dubai. So as we develop these markets, there's places for American goods to go in as well as we grow the marketplace. So it's not just about minerals. It's ultimately all about engaging our large market with their large market and doing it on a capitalistic basis, which will automatically, they want it. So automatically that will defeat the Chinese
Yes.
strategically. But we have to have the will on our side to do it. And Nestpoint
Absolutely.
helps bridge that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. And doesn't Africa have one of the fastest growing young populations in the
Yeah,
world? They say that I think the biggest population growth in the world by 2050 is going to be in Africa.
It'll be Nigeria, Bill. Nigeria will be the third largest country by population by 2050.
And in 2050, 25% of the world will be African. And the other part of that is that most of them, it'll be under 30. So if we don't engage the African populations now, we lose it for a generation. It is a strategic imperative, more than it is just an economic opportunity.
Well, and
Absolutely.
could I add to that, Bill, real
Yes, please.
quickly
Go
here?
ahead.
I'll tell you, Murph and I dialogue with African leaders almost daily from the eastern coast to the western coast. And what we're telling you today is what exactly they're telling us. When we sit in the embassy, when we go abroad, they sit down and say, we want to do trade with the United States. We want to support President Trump and the American agenda. We want to have a partnership, but nothing's really ever been offered. The only olive branch has been from China. And unfortunately, they understand the long-term pains that causes them, but there hasn't been an alternative offer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I seemed to notice in what you were talking about before the show was that there are a lot of companies that are already doing business there in Africa, and the Trump administration's diplomatic view has changed so much and so dramatically. A lot of those countries are like, what are we doing? You know, where do we go from here? Is this something that Nestpoint can do, is go in and consult with those firms and show them how they can still work and prosper in this new environment?
Absolutely. From my standpoint, you know, it's interesting to be able to speak Africa and Trump. You know, those are two things that seem mutually exclusive. They're not. In reality, the bridge of that gap is Nestpoint. And it's because we have experts who have been on the continent and are trusted on the continent for decades. And we also have the ear of the administration. And both sides of the, you know, that's kind of the translation piece of it. But the reality of it is both sides want the same thing. So it's just a matter of now having the will to do it. And from a corporate perspective, yes, anyone who's interested in either maintaining or expanding their position in the African marketplace and to take advantage of trade not aid and the new Trump doctrine, I think Nestpoint is your first step.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, Alex. Let's say that I'm a company, okay, $100 million company. I'm doing business, or I want to do business in Africa. Not sure exactly how to do it, how to get involved. Is there a way that Nestpoint could work with my company and show me how to do that?
Yeah, of course. Through great folks like Murph right here, we've cultivated amazing relationships, not only on the government side, but on the business side. We have great friends over at the East African Chamber of Commerce and the such. And those folks are really on the ground of building these African economies up. And we've been able to, you know, as Murph described, have one foot in the door of Africa and one foot in the door of the United States, and particularly the Trump administration. And that's something we do often, where we use our relationships we've built in Africa, kind of reverse lobbying, right? Talking with our clients and those on the continent of Africa who want to see American investment and be able to help them navigate and handle any regulatory concerns going the other way, whether it's permitting, whether it's finding a location. And then once again, making sure from the U.S. side that they aren't impacted as much as we can allow that American business to thrive in a new marketplace.
Yeah, yeah.
Unlike any other time in my 30-year career, business, diplomacy, and advocacy are more interlinked than ever. And really, that's where Nestpoint comes in. We're the translator of all three of those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's what I've heard about the Chinese initiatives. They go in there offering all this great stuff, all this infrastructure, but the whole idea is really to build up a big debt. So these African nations all of a sudden are, I don't want to use the wrong word here, but they're indebted, to China here. And you guys are talking about a whole different idea, more of an equity idea as opposed to an indebtedness, right?
Absolutely. And it's even more than that. The Chinese typically bring their own workers, their own expertise, and ultimately bring it to the continent. Whereas the American model is to bring our expertise and train the local population to be able to be self-sufficient. It ultimately it's much more cost effective to be able to train somebody to do something rather than bring somebody from China to do it. And the Chinese really are doing it from their own strategic perspective
Right.
to use for their own unemployment rate. But that doesn't help an African country at all if you have a huge project and bring 85% of the workforce from China, which happens.
Right.
And
Right.
I will
Exactly.
say, President Trump has set the stage for this. And in the first Trump presidency, he established the DFC, the International Development and Finance Corps, which acts as America's private equity firm. He laid that foundation to do exactly what Murph is talking about here. Invest in these countries, seeking a return, of course, because we are a capitalist nation and we
Right.
need a benefit. But to cut out wasteful spending like USAID, which was spending on gender confirming programs across the continent, but saying we will invest in your energy, we will invest in your petroleum, we will invest in your roads, in your bridges, and allow you to build and employ and raise your people out of poverty. We're all for it. We just have to see a return on investment that all sides win. And Trump pioneered that in Trump 1, and now we're seeing that again in Trump 2. As they're taking the budget from USAID, they're looking to relocate a lot of that into DFC, my assumption, and be able to really gear up to invest in the continent and build those economies, but also see a return on investment for average day Americans.
Absolutely. Are you seeing from the young people of Africa, are you seeing a desire to become more westernized, more prosperous, more independent? What do you think, Murph?
I laugh. I say if President Trump did an 8 country tour of Africa, he'd have the biggest crowds in history.
Hmm.
They are capitalistic centric. They want to have the American dream. Ultimately they look to the West, and the younger they are, the more they look to the West, and especially America. And Donald Trump is one of the most popular figures on the African continent, and
Really?
he really is, especially with the youth. And it's because they see a person who has done it. He's not like the traditional African old man leadership, which inherited it or took it. Donald Trump is a guy who built things and does things and gets things done, and that's what they look for themselves. And
And
from that perspective, it's a huge, huge opportunity. And we have to give a shout out to special advisor Boulos, who is going on behalf of President Trump and starting to open these marketplaces up, because he's doing it in a very strategic way in certain marketplaces. But that is very much resonating with the youth of Africa, and now they're anticipating us to come and follow with investment so that we can work together.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, it sounds like you have the ear of the Trump administration. Am I getting the right read on that, Alex?
what I will say is our operatives have all been very supportive of the president from 2016 till now, and have cultivated great relationships with his administration. We're happy to serve on his behalf because, as I said, we are lobbyists. We do represent our clients, but at the end of the day, Nestpoint's core function is also to advance American interest. So, the conversations we have with the admin, from State Department to Homeland Security to Department of Energy to Department of Commerce to DFC, has been very boonful for us to be able to not only engage properly for our clients, but also help, once again, bring the information and the real-time data to the Trump administration to make the wise decisions they need to.
That's fantastic. Murph, project 5, 10 years into the future. Where is this whole thing? Where is Nestpoint? Where is this Africa relationship? Let's say 10 years into the future.
10 years into the future, I think we have a very stable relationship from a critical minerals perspective. I think it will be uh, driven by this administration, but regardless of the future, these critical minerals are strategically important to the United States, and as such, will end up creating an economy around that. But people have to understand that when you have a mining culture, things come around that: railroads, hotels. There's a
Right.
whole future there where I see a U.S. African hegemony against the bricks of the world, frankly. I
Right.
think I think that is a failed model. I think that is still looking at the past and the old economy. I think President Trump is setting us up for a new economy, including fintech and digital economy. And I think Africa can take a huge leap beyond Asia in terms of their acceptance and their ability to use digital technology and digital finance. So I think ultimately we're going to see what we're laying the groundwork now as what the future economy is going to be. It'll be the United States continuing to be the market leader both in technology and finance, but the broader marketplace will include Africa, and they will remain the largest supplier of those materials.
Fantastic. I'm excited. I didn't know that much about Africa before we got started, so I'm very excited by this conversation. Alex, we'll give you the final word here. Where is Nestpoint Associates going? Not just Africa, but worldwide.
Of course. Well, I think we have something really special here. We, one, are a private equity firm, two, are a government affairs firm, and then we have a bunch of different tentacles reaching out from our nonprofit, the Nestpoint Foundation, which we've just launched, to some of our subsidiaries that work in the tech space. We really have something I don't think has been seen in over a decade. And our team is very close, and we have a very close bond because we understand what we're building here could really help direct U.S. policy for the next several decades. And so I'd love to see us continue our growth we've seen and our success, and be able to continue to relay this information to the Trump administration. But once again, not only be able to relay it to them, but for further administrations to be able to be advocates for smart policy that builds allies abroad, but also benefits the average American. Because we've all been tired of wasteful spending, wasteful wars, all of the such. It's one of the reasons why President Trump is president now. We were tired of the old model, the waste model. I come from a middle-class background. To see the government spending on frivolous things, it angers me. So if Nestpoint can continue to play a role in advocating for smarter policy, which has a return on investment for taxpayers, we at Nestpoint will be happy to do so.
Fantastic. Very excited about the future of Nestpoint. Folks, this has been Alex Olson. He's the Deputy Director of Government Affairs, and Michael Murphy. He's a Senior Advisor to Africa, and they are with Nestpoint Associates. Alex, how can people reach out to you guys and find out more about your company?
Yeah, of course. You can visit our website, www.nestpointgroup.com, and you can reach out via our website. We have a great team behind us. So if you guys do want to inquire on how we can help navigate, whether it's equity problems or government affairs and regulatory problems, our team is very prompt in getting back with you to be able to help you navigate both the government and the private sector.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.